Hello and welcome to Take Back Time. My name is Penny Zenker and I'm your host. And I'm super excited to have Brenda Reynolds today because Brenda, she is a specialist in dealing with uncertainty. She is a sought after organization and change management consultant, speaker, coach, facilitator, and she's worked with hundreds of major corporations, nonprofits, and organizations, including Special Olympics, the Nemours Pediatric Health System, Nationwide Children's Hospital, and many more. She's also a best-selling Amazon author and a TEDx speaker, a fellow TEDxer. So Brenda, without further ado, I'm so happy to have you here. We work in a mastermind together and we've got so many great discussions in the short time that we've known each other. So I'm excited for today's talk.
Now we're letting everyone in on our good discussion today, Penny. So that's exciting.
Yeah, exactly. And I thought we'd start out, I said that you're sort of that expert in uncertainty. We are certainly in crazy times, right? And you could say that we're over the hump, but maybe it's just the beginning, right? It's 2021. We've just come out of the 2020 uncertainty, but a lot of people still have major uncertainty in front of them for 2021. What do you think is the key to dealing with uncertainty?
Well, it's funny because I was thinking about conversations that I've had as recently as today on some coaching calls with clients, and 2021 just has different uncertainty in it, right? People are trying to figure out what does return to work look like and what are our new policies going to be for working in the office or working remotely. And I'm watching colleges try to figure out what does graduation look like. And There's just a whole new set of uncertainties. So I think what we've learned this year is the key is to take it, think to the future, but then focus on the next things you can do, because chances are that the strategy to get there is going to change very quickly.
Right. So not to get too fixated on the way that it happens. Is that what I hear you saying, is come up with some options and not be too married to any which one?
Yeah. You know that saying, make a plan, God laughs. That's how you make God laugh, by making a plan. COVID has shown us that, if nothing else.
Right. Tell us, I know a little bit about your story because I've, read your book and seen your TEDx, but many people are meeting you for the first time. Tell us how you learned about this personally.
It's interesting because I've worked with clients for a long time during times of change and transition in particular. But in 2008, when the economy was taking a nosedive, my life decided to do the same thing too, which I know a lot of people can relate to. For me, that looked like unexpectedly divorcing, having two little boys, a consulting practice, but no guaranteed income or benefits, and a client who was asking me to come back internally and lead from inside of an organization. And I made the choice to do that and navigate some very uncertain times. But I can remember sitting in the sunroom of my then home with my face in my hands. It's just such a poignant moment. I remember who was in the room with me, thinking, I can't see my way forward. And yet I did. And over time, I began to reflect on how fortunate I felt that I had the background I did, because I was having to use the skills I would use for a client on myself and my own.
It's hard, right? It's not easy. It's easier to see it in someone else than it is to practice it ourselves.
And that became the material for the book, because I thought, gee, I wish more people had access to these tools, these ways of thinking and being. And the book, while it's been written for the leader, lots of people who are not in leadership roles read it and get something personal out of it.
Right. Well, we're the leaders of our lives, right? So
exactly.
So we're all leaders in that context. And if you're a parent, you're a leader because you're leading your children. So I think we just sometimes have narrow definitions for things. And when we open up those definitions, we see that it's more applicable than you could imagine.
Totally.
So your book is called TBD. Like, how do you come up with a name like that?
You'll love this story. I love this story. I'm so glad you asked me that question. I started writing the book, and I went through 4,000 working titles, and I was getting so frustrated.
4,000?
It was just like, it just felt like, every 3 seconds I had a new title. And I was getting so frustrated. And I went to this meeting in Philadelphia with about 30 of my peers. And it was an introductory activity on a flip chart where we had to write down things that we were working on. And I drew a little book. And on the cover, I wrote TBD. And when it was my turn to talk, I said, I've got this book. It's about uncertainty and change, and I don't know what to call it. But if anyone has a good idea, if you're good with titles, let me know. Right for now, I've just labeled it TBD. And they all in unison screamed, that's your title. And I still didn't get it. And I said, no, that's not my title. That's just what they go, no, that's your title.
Right.
So the funny part of it is I was on this mission to find a title. It came out of the blue. And when I came home to open my manuscript and type the title in, months and months prior, I had typed in TBD.
Right.
So in a weird way, it was there all along. And I think when we navigate uncertain times, sometimes the answers, you can't figure them out. They're going to come as they can come. And when we go on a big quest to force something to happen, we just chase it away.
Right. I'm feeling like the Wizard of Oz. I'm feeling like Dorothy right now, right?
It's crazy.
But it's always been within you. You just have to find it, right? I like to feel that moment just welled up in me.
It's hysterical because I still see some of those people on occasion, and they are so proud that they they titled my book.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's a great story. That's a great story. So, I want to bring this around to people because the topic of the show is called Take Back Time, right? And it's about productivity and working smarter and those types of things. And I find that a lot of people get stuck in uncertainty and, in those types of environments. And so I think it's completely relevant to understand some strategies to help get unstuck, to help to better manage uncertainty so that we can more productively move forward. What's your take? Like, how do you see the impact of dealing with uncertainty and its impact on our day-to-day and overall productivity?
I think it's the muscle we have to build, right? We're really good, and the title's a play on words. We're really good on action. The to be, the determined part. The being with uncertainty is the part we struggle with, but I think it's the muscle we need to build as leaders. I think it's the muscle we need to build as human beings. And so some of the strategies that I use are really pretty simple, but powerful. It's as simple as,
give us one. Come on.
I mean, it's as simple as, okay, knowing, I use this analogy of it's like driving on a foggy country road. And we think we're slowing down in the fog, but we're actually going faster and being more productive than we think we are. So here are two things to think about relative to that.
That's a good point.
Yeah. Sometimes, when I was doing a long commute home from work years ago, it's easy to think back on everything you didn't get done that day. And then it's what a lousy way to end the day.
Absolutely.
And I caught myself doing that all the time. And then I thought, this is a little crazy. I'm going to do an inventory. I know I was productive today. I'm going to do a mental inventory of everything I did today and everything that moved me in a positive direction. And once I started doing that each day, I got to the point where I sort of out loud in my car, I would say, damn, I'm good. I'm good. Like, this was a good, productive day.
Yeah.
And so I call it my damn I'm good moment when I catch that voice in my head telling me I haven't done enough and I need to do more. And what did I do today? I stop and make the mental inventory, and it just shifts your energy too, to remind ourselves that we're more productive, and we underestimate that.
Absolutely. I love that. We don't know each other that long, but I think there's so many commonalities in the way that we think and approach things. And it's funny because years ago, I also started that practice with a dear friend of mine is, we would find ourselves like beating ourselves up, the push it, do it person, and never being satisfied with what was done and ending the day like that. So we started also in our coaching calls to talk about what are our wins, what did we get done, and focus more on that and recognize that and give ourselves a pat on the back. I like the damn I'm good. I'm going to have to share that with her because she'll love that too. Because it's those little cues that shift our perspective, that give us permission and allow us to let go of that, worry or frustration or anxiety when we are focused on what we didn't do. So I love that. And for me, it was eye-opening too. And it makes such a big difference to end the day with, here's all the things that I did, or, once a week, just to see that you are moving faster than you thought. And I think that's a great practice for everyone let me just point this out for the people who are listening. That's a to-do for you, right? That's something to do, is to shift the way that you end your day. It's also a great transition from work into home, so that you can put it away, put a bow on it, shut the door, whatever you want to call it. And even if you don't have a door to shut, end the day with, here's the things that I did that I'm happy with, I'm proud of, that accomplished something, and start that on a regular basis. I love it. So everybody's got at least one thing to walk away with to do. I'm sorry, I interrupted you. What did you want to say?
We're so excited. We're going to keep interrupting each other. I'm so excited about that point. It's also about not just the quantity of what you did, because sometimes you reflect back on your day and there was that one major thing you accomplished. That's good. That's enough, because that one major thing is moving something big forward. And it's not just about, did I get 20 things done today? But I did do something that was meaningful and important today, and cut ourselves that little break too. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Because that one thing could be a big thing, even if it's a phone call, right? It doesn't have to be take a lot of time. So I totally agree with that.
Like today, I'm going to get to say, hey, if nothing else, I got to do my Penny Zenker podcast, and that's pretty cool. Okay, it doesn't matter what I did the rest of the day.
That's right. Well, and you'll reach thousands of people and you'll make a difference in their lives. So that's a good thing.
Yeah.
That's awesome. We're talking about productivity. One of the questions that I ask every guest is, what's your definition of productivity and why?
My definition of productivity would be taking meaningful and productive action, with, meaningful in all caps, meaningful and productive action to move you toward a deeply satisfying life. Whether it's a work life or a home life, you can't separate the two. But are we taking those actions is it a meaningful and productive day, I guess, is my equation.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, what I'm hearing you say is that if it's meaningful, it's productive. Right. And I love what you said about deeply satisfying life. I like the richness to that, the depth of that. Often people come with higher level definitions, and I love that you're very specific with your words that really hone in on that meaning, right? With the deeply, it hits me when you say it like that.
Because what's the why? Why do we care so much about being productive, right? Well, it only matters if it's getting us where we want to go, or it's eliciting a feeling or a life or an impact that we want to have. So to me, those are my whys for productivity.
I think it's a really good point that you were touching upon, that I think we get caught up in the trap that we think our worth is by the number of things that we do, how busy we are. And, I recently saw on LinkedIn a great set of circles that said, here's your worth and here's your work world. And they overlap like only a tiny bit. Exactly. Right. And used to think that they were totally overlapping each other is I think what this person, and I wish I could give her credit, remember her name, but it wasn't someone that I knew, but I had just come upon it. And it was so poignant to that, is we are not worth any more if we're busier or if we do more or any of that.
It's funny you mentioned that. Sometimes, one of the concepts I talk about in my TEDx is the concept of doing things that are counterintuitive. So when you're in a fog and you're really eager to get to your destination, the last thing you may feel like doing is pulling off the road. But research actually shows it is safer for you not to just pull over on the side of the road, but to literally get off the road and maybe go to a parking lot and wait it out if you can. And I think there's a parallel there to, I catch myself sometimes, maybe on a Friday, thinking, oh gosh, I can't walk away from my computer. I can't walk away from the office. There's still so much to do. But when something happens where I just have to, and I did this weekend. I traveled to see my son at college. I took everything with me to do work while I was there over the weekend. It never happened that I got to do any work. I was more charged up on Monday to pick up where I left off and get busy than if I had tried to jam a little bit of work in over the weekend. So there's just something about that reset and moving completely away from it that kind of ends up being a productivity tip.
Absolutely. Well, it's the renewal. I don't know if you're familiar with Tony Schwartz's work.
Yeah.
The powerful engagement. And I'm reading right now. It's on my desk, as a matter of fact. The way we're working isn't working. And he does a lot of research around renewal and how important it is, in comparing with athletes, and we're the corporate athletes, right? In that context. So the better the performers, the more sleep, the more rest that they need in order to perform better. So it's interesting that there's that correlation. And I love you saying, you have to pull off the road.
Mm-hmm.
I want to challenge you a little bit. I like to challenge people too on the show here a little bit, or just as if we were just together. I do that because I did it today earlier.
I can take it. Go ahead, Penny.
But I just want to ask you a question. So you brought all this work with you, and it's no judgment. I do the same thing, right? Except for when I just came back from Mexico, I did nothing and brought nothing. What would be different if you didn't even bring it with you?
Oh, totally.
Like, did you feel any guilt? Because I think sometimes the fact that we just have it with us creates this pressure, like, oh, I should do it. And it puts that. Do you think you would have been even freer if you had left it home?
I'm thinking about that. Maybe there was another part of me that would think it was a kind of weekend where I might have had some downtime. So I might have wanted to work on my second book, and that would have been pleasant and progress too. So I would have had the option to do that. I don't know. I think I'm going back down to a game in 2 weekends. So I'm going to leave it all at home and let you know, Penny.
That's cool. Check it out, right?
And check it out.
I want to propose to the people who are listening. If you're like us, I do the same thing. I love what I do, so I don't even consider it work. So bring it with me. And there is a necessity, like you said, Brenda, to put it to the side, to put it off the side of the road, and you keep going, or going in a different direction. I think that there is something important, and I found it for me, and I struggle with that. But when I do leave it behind, I find that it frees me just that much more.
I would have to think it does. Yeah. And I think, even in my coaching with others, practice what you preach, right? I think we sometimes have to do it to realize the world didn't end. Things are still okay. It didn't take that big nosedive you thought it would because you weren't working all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
So, interesting stuff around the whole fog metaphor, right? In terms of, you said in terms of getting a little bit more done or being faster than you think you are. What else would be some tips that come around that metaphor?
I really talk about when you navigate that country road and you get impatient, you flip on your high beams. Somehow we think that's going to help us. And it's sort of like that impatience with getting more done. You flip on your high beams. But the fact is, on a foggy country road, your high beams are the worst thing you can do. It just obscures your view even more. And so the power is in the low beams. And what I learned when I was going through my divorce and my life turned sideways was that the only way I could really not freak myself out was to keep my low beams on. And, you know, in a car where the low beams illuminate about 300 feet in front of us at a time, and you just navigate the stretch in front of you, and then the next stretch becomes clear. You can see it, but you can't see it from too far back. So, and I really do practice this. It's kind of this interesting metaphor for staying present and doing what you know you can do right now. And that's our only job, because in uncertain times, like think about COVID, it's shifting. We can't plan 9 months out. We can't plan a year out. We may have to look at this month, this week, today. And that's all we can do. And it keeps me from getting stuck in the past or getting anxious about the future, because the fog we're in uncertainty kicks up a lot of emotion. You know, that the fog comes from not being able to see the path forward and all the emotions it kicks up, the anxiety and the fear. And when I catch myself in anxiety and fear, I know my head is in the future and I need to reel it in. And I'll just say to people, low beams, baby, low beams. That's all we can do.
Right. You know, I love that you've got all these cues, right? that help you shift and to remind you of where you want to be and where you need to be. And so I advise everybody who's listening is for these uncertain times, for any uncertain times. It's not just this year. Like you said, 2008 for me was also a blow up year. And I hear for a lot of people. And, you know, every year brings its own uncertainty. So we have to have those things to fall back on. You know,
and
and I think
ourselves a break too, Penny. We are so hard on ourselves.
Totally.
I mean, sometimes all we can do is low beams. And I mean, for me, low beams shows up when I take a Post-it note. This is for the listeners who say, oh, I can manage that. To take a little Post-it note each day and say, what is my low beam focus for today? And I try to only keep about 3 things on it. So it's manageable and I feel success around it. But it helps me to get the distractions, the other fog out of my way, and just focus on those.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it.
My low beam Post-its 5 days in a row. By the end of the week, I've been pretty productive.
Yeah, I love that idea. I also talk about, you know, just keeping it simple, right? Simplifying. The more you can simplify during stressful times, the better. I remember Jocko Willink, I forget how he pronounced his last name, but he talks about extreme ownership. And he's in the military, in the SEALs, I believe. I don't remember which division, but anyway, he talks about how when things are so stressful on the front, that you have to keep your instructions completely simple or people won't be able to follow it. The complexity then is part of that fog, right? Because the stress itself is the fog, and then the complexity and everything on top of it. So for business leaders out there, you know, that's what I'm also taking away from what you're saying is it's really about keeping it simple for yourself and for your team. So the more that's going on in the environment, simplify, simplify, simplify.
Totally simplify and be careful of the potholes, right? So like, I think one of the potholes is we start comparing ourselves to other people. And what I've given myself permission for, and I heard you talking with one of your last podcast guests about this recently, is this myth of, oh, if you don't get up at 4 a.m. and start your day, you can't be productive. Well, that does not work for me.
Right.
My most productive hours are from about 11 to 6. And I have a life where I can work those hours easily. And I would rather work until 7 than start my day at 6 o'clock in the morning. So I've finally given into that. And that doesn't happen every day of the week, but where I can manage my schedule to my energy and my creative way I need to work, I don't compare to what other people do because those are my productive hours.
Right.
4 o'clock, maybe somebody else's productive hours.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. We all have to, it also depends on what phase of your life you're in. Some people who have young kids, that might be the only peace that you get is, you know, when they're asleep so early in the morning and later in the evening. So you do what you can with what you have, I think is important. And when you can design it the way that you know that it works, then you should definitely do that.
Exactly. Exactly.
Absolutely. Since we're talking about navigating uncertainty, I wanted to share with you and get your thoughts and have some discussions around sort of one of my antidotes. So in my 2008, I was living in Zurich, Switzerland. I was also invited for a divorce, among other things that happened in 2008. My kids were 1 and 3. And I was just so worried and upset. And I know you get what I mean. There's so many emotions that are flying at that time. Your self-worth is in question. What's going on with your children and what does that mean to their futures? And all the questions that we ask ourselves. And I was living in a foreign country. Do I move? Do I stay? What do I do? And I remember being in this sort of whirlwind of funk, in that fog. And I read an article that was in Oprah magazine, and it talked about the addicts who were coming out of their time in the rehab, and how they navigate, because there's a lot of fears and emotions and things about will this work? How do I keep this in place? And they talked about and used the analogy, and I love that you're using these metaphors and analogies. They talked about the kids game, hot or colder. And what happens, and I tell this story a lot, in different contexts when I'm speaking, but what happens when you walk into a room and you're playing this game and you just stand there? Nothing happens, right? And that's what happens if you just stop, in the fog. But if you want to, the equivalent of your low beams, what was for me and what I took away from that is you've got to take a step in one direction or another, right, in order to get the feedback to know whether you're heading in the right direction or not. And then with that feedback, you can determine, do I pivot or do I continue the same direction? Is it warmer? Great, I'll keep going. Is it colder? And we get that feedback from different areas. So I allowed that game, right, if we can gamify it, to know that all I need to know is what's next. So that's my cue of staying present and just keeping my low beams on, is just need to know what's next. What's the next step? And then we'll figure it out from there, and have sort of that faith that I'll get the feedback I need to move in one direction or another.
And I love what you're saying there, Penny, because I think we unconsciously assume that a step in a wrong direction is going to be game over. But it's sort of like if you're in that fog and you're using your navigation system and you make a wrong turn, remember the old recalculate voice that would come over. All it's going to do is say, oh, I guess I have to recalculate. I guess I need to turn left instead of turning right. And when I remember that most of the decisions I make are impermanent, there are very few decisions you can't redirect. It takes the pressure off of me to always have to do the exact right thing, because you can change it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really important point. And I think that sometimes, I don't know about you, but if I've been on vacation and sometimes I went down a wrong path or whatever, sometimes some of the most beautiful scenery was down that wrong road. Or actually, when my boyfriend and I were in Italy, and we just randomly went off of our path because we saw that there were some ruins. It turned out to be better than the Colosseum, because the Colosseum was so commercialized, and this one you could go down into the bottom of the stadium and everything. And so sometimes those detours are the richest, the most rewarding. And so what if we just went with the flow, right?
Well, sometimes what's happening to us is nudging us out of this, maybe the path for you was really clear before, but you're on this path and telling yourself, this is good enough. This is good enough. Yeah, this is the path I'm going to go on. And when that disorienting event hits your life or your work world, it may be nudging you into something that's even better. Maybe you had gotten complacent with things being good enough, but really it could be better. And that's kind of a cool thing too.
Yeah, I want to challenge you again, because I know that there's people listening who are going, yeah, you guys are just those positive people.
Well, we are
Like,
that.
so annoying. You're just those positive people. And I don't want to be positive. And is this about positivity?
Here's what I think. I think it never feels positive when you're in it. I'm keeping that real. Trust me, it did not feel positive. And anytime I'm moving through some uncertainty, no, it does not feel great. I think it only in the rearview mirror makes sense. Then you look back and say, oh, I'm glad we made that little pivot on our trip. Look what happened. But in the moment, you might have been frustrated that you made a wrong turn. I can tell you for a long time, my disruption in 2008 did not feel like a gift of any sort. It was only in the, it's like the gift of the fog is in the rearview mirror.
Right.
And it's only when it's in the rearview mirror can you see how far you've come and what you got from it. For me, it has allowed me to practice what I preach. It has helped me relate to a lot of people who've gone through their own disorienting events. And I came to realize the fog stood for, it's a freaking opportunity for growth. And sometimes the emphasis is on the freaking. I mean, you're like, what the hell's going on? Or you're freaking out.
Right.
And we equally have to be gentle with ourselves to know that's part of the growth process. It is not always fun and Pollyanna and positive.
Right. I often have to say to people too, that it's not about positivity.
No.
It's, yes, I'm a positive person, but I'm very pragmatic and very practical. And of course, when you're in any type of difficult situation, I mean, we've all had, times where, we've had someone we love die or close to death or illness or different types of things that hold us back. I think the thing is, it's like you said, is you had different techniques and different things that helped you get through it faster. So it's not about being positive and saying it doesn't exist and it's not there. It's about how to be more purposeful to get through it in the most productive way, if I could say it like that, versus getting stuck in it, right? You want to go through it, not get stuck in it.
And what can I control and what can't I control? What practices can I employ? Which ones can't I? If you can indulge this story, I mean, just to normalize this for people, I was coaching the CEO years ago, and I walked into his office for our session, and we usually sat at this round table for it. And that day when I walked in, he had his head down on the table, on his arms, and he didn't even look up when I walked in. And I said, wow, okay, so what do we have to talk about today? Without lifting his head, he said, oh my gosh, everybody says to me, how are you so insightful? You're so smart about our industry. You always know the right move to make. You're brilliant. And he said, I've got to tell you the truth today, because I don't get to say this to many people. Most of the time, at best, I am one step ahead of everybody else. And I share that because, not to scare people, but to say, even those people we think have it all, know it all, are also just taking it one step at a time, low beam strategy often too.
Right. And they have their own obstacles and hurdles and different challenges, potholes, as you would say in your analogy. We all have them.
We all have
Yeah.
them. So I always say, keep your eyes on your own paper, because, you're not leading their life. They're not leading yours. Your situation is your situation and what works for you.
Right. Drive your own car.
Drive your own car.
You can't drive
it doesn't hurt to have a few passengers in there. You know how even when you're driving in the bad weather, if you have a passenger, you feel better. So know who those people are. Know who the people you're willing to travel through that weather condition with, who you can be real with, who can calm you down, who can help direct you, who can guide you. Know who your dream team is too.
Awesome. Those are great points. Those are great points. Well, we've already talked for, we're just like,
Keep going.
So I'd love to have people learn more about you and, get a hold of your book and watch your TED Talk, where can they go to get more information about you?
They can go to Brenda, the letter K, Reynolds.com. That's my website. And really almost anything you want to find about me will be there. You can access the book, which is on Amazon as well. You can see the link to my TEDx talk on navigating transition fog. You'll see some products, the services we provide, and some resources there as well. So I'd love to see them there.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you're like, I really wanted to share this today with these people today? Did we miss anything?
I don't think so. I think, damn, we're good.
Wow. I used to have an assistant who was in the house. And so she'd hear my conversations and she's like, you've got a whole group of self-congratulation society. And I said, yeah, and you should get one too.
Good passengers to have in the car.
Absolutely.
I'm glad I'm in the car with you, Penny.
Oh, thank you. Well, likewise, I see lots of further fun things for us to get involved with in the future.
For sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for all that you've shared today, your stories and that analogy that runs through that people, I'm sure that they took away some great nuggets to work with.
Thank you for having me and including me with your audience, Penny. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. And for all of you listening, thank you for being here and for being loyal listeners. And if you're not a subscriber yet, go ahead and subscribe and share it with your friends. We have different experts on the show talking about different things. So everything from uncertainty to specific apps and tools that you can use, different strategies in marketing and, all across the board in what can help you to live smarter and work smarter, right? So it's not just working smarter because we do other things other than working. We want to live smarter. So maybe that'll be the name of my next book. Who knows? Anyway, thank you for being here. And remember, just take at least this one thing that we said in the beginning that you could take away and do right away, which is at the end of your day, instead of looking at all the things that you didn't do, go ahead and set up a practice and start doing this on a regular basis to look at the things that you did do and then assemble what's important for the following day. So give yourself a break, use that as a transition, give yourself a pat on the back at every day for making it through and doing some things that really are driving you forward. You're going faster and further than you actually think. So thank you all for being here. My name is Penny Zenker, and this is Take Back Time. We'll see you in the next episode.